welcome back. This is going to be the tutorial for these little sharks that I made with Lion brand 24/7 yarn. The color is a color I don't have anymore, but I'm going to be using pink lemonade and white, which is white. And these guys come out real little, but you can also use the same pattern to make a bigger shark with blanket yarn or any other kind of yarn. Just adjust your hook. Obviously, the size is very different. Here's what you will need to make your shark. If you have one of my kits, then you'll have all this stuff in it already, except a pair of scissors. You'll need your yarn. Like I said, I'm using pink lemonade, cotton 24/7 Lion brand, and white. You'll need some black yarn, either to sew on eyes or sew on any of these details. You need a crochet hook. I'm using a 3mm for this yarn. Of course, if you're making a bigger shark, you'll use a different hook. Scissors to cut your yarn and your ends. Sewing needle to sew in some ends. And stuffing to stuff inside your shark. Safety eyes and a stitch marker too. We start out with a slip knot and a chain 2 instead of a magic ring in this case. I did that because when we start out, we're only doing 4 stitches in the first row and then 6 and then 9. So the first few rows are really little, and it's very hard for me personally to just do 4 stitches in a magic ring and the next 2 rows and have it actually turn out okay. So I like to do it with the slip stitch when it's that small a number. So you take your yarn, put it on your 2 fingers, and you can hold it with your thumb, swing around the working part of the yarn, cross over your fingers, bring it around the top, and secure it with your hand. Take your hook, go underneath the first yarn, over the second, and hook it, and then just pull it through. And that's your slip knot, and then you can tighten it up with the working yarn to get just the loop on your hook. Mine got a little twisted there. And then we're going to chain 2. 1 and 2. So the first chain, which is the chain that's the one where your hook is coming out of with the loop, we're not going to put anything into that chain, but into this second chain, we're going to use that as the place for all of our stitches in the first row. So the first row is going to have 4 single crochets in it. If you want to, you can put a stitch marker in your first stitch just so you don't get confused, because the second round will start by going into that first stitch, but you might be a little confused about that first chain, but don't go into that one. We'll get there. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can do this in a magic ring if you prefer. I just like to do it, kind of keeps it nice and tight, and it's easier for me to work with if it's in a slip knot. So that's row 1. Okay, for row 2, we're going to do 1 single crochet and then 2 single crochets, an increase, 1 and then an increase around this row. And this row and maybe the next one are really kind of hard to get into because it's real small, kind of fiddly, and you might first only get into one of the 2 parts of the V, but you got to really work at getting in the right spot. See, that time I got into only the front one of the loops, back loop. So one thing you can do is just kind of take your hook, take your loop out, and just make sure you can get into that stitch and then start again. Okay, so let's try that again. I know I can get under there now. So we're going to do 1 single crochet. This is really the hardest part right now. 1 single crochet. And then I'm going to put on my stitch marker. And then the next stitch we're going to do 2. Now because this is so tight, it's just really hard to see your stitches. So that was stitch number 1, then 2, 3, 4. So the second stitch is right here. We're going to put in 2 single crochets there. There we go. 1 and 2. And if you need a refresher on how to make a single crochet, let's get into the 3rd stitch. It's kind of hard to see your stitches here because they're stretched kind of long. So you got to see where the next one starts is right there, and then that's your 4th. So let's try to get into the 3rd one. And to do a single crochet, just as a refresher, you go into both parts of the V on the stitch below. You yarn over, pull through your loop, then you have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through both loops. So that was 1, and now our last stitch is going to have 2 single crochet. And hopefully that's the most difficult row. Just the very tippy top of the fin. There you go. And we got to do 2 stitches in here. So our first row we had 4 stitches. This row will have 6. You can always check, make sure you have enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, our next row is going to be a repeat of the first row, which will be 1 single crochet and then an increase. And we'll, as we get through this row, we're going to talk about how to turn your work the right way, because as you're crocheting up around this circle, you really want it to go to fold down. So we'll do 1 more row and then we'll clean that up. So 1 single crochet, this is row 3. Got my stitch marker, my first stitch, and then 2 single crochets on the next stitch. This stitch will have 2 single crochets, 1, then 2, then the next stitch 1, I'm going to figure out the top of my stitch here. It's there. Well, I think I'll need to turn my work a little bit now, just because my stitches are getting a little turned. So the part with your end of your yarn is going to be on the inside of the shark. So you want your shark fin facing the other way, not with this string coming out. Okay, so this might make it easier. So we did 1 and then 1, 2. This next stitch, now I can see the top a little bit better. One, then 1, 2. One, and the last stitch has 2. it's an increase stitch, and that 1, 2. So at the end of this row, there should be 9 stitches, which we can double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, in the next row, we're going to do 2 single crochets and then an increase. So 1. Let's get our stitch marker on there. 2. And then in the next stitch, an increase. So 2 single crochets in the next stitch. 1, 2, and 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet for a total of 2 in the next 2 stitches. And then the third stitch will have 2 single crochet. We'll do this one more time. 1, 2, and then 2 single crochets in here. Okay, so that's row 4, and now you should have 12 stitches, and you have your little fin. For the next row, we're going to start working on our oval shape. So you see these guys, they kind of get into an oval after these first few rows, so they can be kind of squishier and narrower as opposed to a ball. And that's what we're going to start to work on here. So instead of making our increases even around each row, we're going to break them up a little bit. And so one side will have more stitches, and then, or 2 sides will have more stitches, and then 2 sides won't have as many stitches, and then you end up with an oval. So for row 5, we're going to do 3 single crochet, and then 3 increases, and then repeat that. So first we'll do our 3 single crochet. That's 1, 'oops, cannot do this, I guess. 1, 2, 3. Then our next 3 stitches will each have increases, so 2 single crochets in each of the next 3. 1 increase, 2 is our second stitch where we're going to be increasing, and then our third stitch where we'll be increasing. Then we're going to repeat that pattern. So we'll do 3 single crochets in the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and then we'll do 3 increases again. First increase, second increase, third increase. After this row, you should have 18 stitches. So you want to count those to make sure. I'm getting tangled. Okay. Next row is row 6. We're going to do a similar pattern, but it'll be a little different for this row. We're still going to start with 3 single crochet, 1, 2, 3, and then the next part of the pattern is going to be 1 single crochet and an increase 3 times. So 1 single crochet and increase, 1 single crochet and increase, 1 single crochet and increase over the next 6 stitches. So single crochet, get this off there, 1 single crochet and then an increase, one single crochet, an increase, one single crochet, and an increase. And the rest of the row will be 3 single crochets, and then we'll repeat that increase pattern we just did. So 1, 2, 3. Then we'll do the same pattern we did before on the increases. 1 single crochet, 1 increase, 1 single crochet, 1 increase, 1 single crochet, and 1 increase. And that is the end of your row 6. You should have 24 stitches after that row. Okay, so here we are for row 7. We just finished row 6 and have 24 stitches. This next row, row 7, is going to be 5 single crochet, and then we'll do that repeat pattern of 1 single crochet, 1 increase 3 times. And then we'll do 6 single crochet and do the same repeat, and then we'll have a single crochet at the end. You'll see. So the first thing we're going to do is 5 single crochet. 1, I'll get my stitch marker. 2, 3, 4, 5. And since we're making that oval shape, we'll now do our increases in this area. So it'll be 1 single crochet, an increase, 1 single crochet, an increase. Do that one more time. 1 single crochet and an increase. Okay, now we're going to do 6 single crochet, 4, 5, 6, and do the same pattern, 1 and an increase 3 times. 1 single crochet and an increase, 1 single crochet and an increase, 1 single crochet and an increase. Oops. And there's 1 single crochet at the end, Now we should have 30 stitches, and you can see it's becoming more oval, so it'll look more like this shape when we're done. And now row 8, we're going to do a similar pattern. We're going to start with 5 single crochet, but we'll shift it a little bit, you'll see. 1, we're still increasing in these rows, these few more rows. 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're going to do 1 and an increase 3 times, 1 single crochet, whoops, and an increase, and do that 3 times. Single crochet, increase, single crochet, increase. Okay, that was our 3 times. Now we're going to do 9 single crochet and do the same pattern. 2, 'Don't know if you can hear cat in the background. That's 9. And we're going to do 1 single crochet, 1 increase 3 times. And we should have 4 stitches left after that we'll just do single crochets in. So I did 1 and now an increase, 1 increase, 1 increase, and now we should have 4, hopefully. 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, and we'll do 4 single crochets across these 4 stitches. And after this row, you should have 36 stitches. If you want to take a moment to pause and count. Okay, so we're at the end of row 8. You should have 36 stitches. Hopefully you take a moment to count that. This next row will be a little bit different because I'm going to put all the increases here and in the other side, but we'll do 3 increases in a row after the first 9 stitches instead of doing 1 single crochet and an increase. So we start off this row, row 9, with 9 single crochet. I'll meet you after the 9. Coming up on number 9, 9th single crochet. For the next 3 stitches, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9. For the next 3 stitches, we're going to increase. So we're going to do 3 increases in a row. Increase, increase, 1 more, increase, and then we're going to do 13 single crochets, and I'll meet you once you've done 13, and we'll go back to our old pattern of 1 and 1, 1 and 1. Okay, this is my 13th stitch. And after this, we're going to do 1 and an increase, 1 and an increase, 1 and an increase, like we did in previous rows. We'll do 1 single crochet and an increase 3 times. It's the first one. Single crochet and an increase, that's the second one. And now a third one, single crochet, then an increase, and we should have 5 stitches left from the row before, and we'll put 5 single crochets in, 1 for each stitch. There we go. Now we are just about at the end of row 9, and if you count your stitches, you should have 42. So we have one more increase row, and then we're gonna build out this part just a little bit. So one more increase row, then we'll do a few rows of all the same stitches. So for this next row, row 10, we're gonna do 10 single crochets, and then we'll do 3 increases like we did before. So 1, I'll put my stitch marker back in, and I'll meet you around on the 10th one. And then we'll do our increases together. I'm on my 10th single crochet, and now I'm gonna, that was 10, now I'm gonna put in 3 increases. 1, 2, and 1 more. And for the rest of the row, we'll do 17 single crochets to get us to the other side. 2. I'll meet you over here on our 17th. So I'm on 16 and 17. 16, 17. Then we're going to do 1 single crochet and an increase. A little speck on there. Get rid of that. 3 times. 1 single crochet, 1 increase. Do that 2 more times. 1 single crochet and an increase. And the rest of the stitches of the row, which there should be 6, will be single crochets. All right, well, that's row 10. This should be what your shark looks like after all the increases. We are going to do 3 rows of just single crochets all around. So there'll be 48 stitches all around, and we'll do that 3 times. And after we do that 3 times, we will change color to our second color, and then we'll do it 1 more time. So right now, 11 rows, 11, 12, and 13 will just be 1 single crochet each stitch. Make sure you use your stitch marker if you need to keep track, and I would suggest you do, especially if you're not increasing or anything. You can just kind of lose track pretty easily. We're going to do 48 stitches around 3 times. And then I will meet you back close to the end of row 13, where I will show you how to change color to your second color for your shark. So I am coming up on the last few stitches of row 13. Hopefully you are here as well. And I'm getting my second color ready to attach. Let me get some of it out. It's stuck in there. And hopefully you've done 3 rows of 48 stitches, or just about, and we're going to change color at the very end of this row to our second color. I'll use white. So I have just a few stitches left, and it's on the very last stitch that will change color. There are a lot of different ways to do color changes. This is a relatively easy one for a beginner crocheter to do. It does create a little bit of a kind of a step up. You'll see once we do a row of it that you can kind of see where the color changes. There are other color changes you can do that make it less noticeable. Usually it involves an extra row, but For our purposes and for the purposes of this little shark, you really don't see it that much. Also because we do one of the fins right by that color change, so doesn't really make a difference how we do it. And this is an easy, relatively easy way. So this is how we'll do it. So when you're on your last stitch, you're going to take your hook and insert it into the V like you normally would for a single crochet stitch. You'll pull up a loop again like you generally would do, and you'll have 2 loops on your hook. Now instead of finishing the single crochet with the same color, you're going to drop that color, and we'll cut it off in a minute since we won't use it anymore. Instead of finishing the stitch with the same color, we're going to drop that color down and pick up our new color and make a loop with it. Have a little bit of a tail. We can always knot it with the pink yarn that we're going to cut off soon. So you'll make a loop, or you'll at least just hook it over your hook like that. So now I have a loop on my hook. I'm going to pull that loop through the 2 stitches. Now one thing you'll notice is this pink stitch is super loose. So you got to go behind it where your yarn is that you just dropped and pull that a little bit tight. So that'll tighten up your stitch. And then make sure you have your working yarn. This is my end piece. I'm going to leave that there. Make sure I have my working yarn, which is this, and I pull the loop on my hook a little tighter. But now this guy is still coming up a bit. So for a stitch or 2, it may come up. So even though we're not really starting our next row yet, I'm putting in my first stitch of row 14, which is just going to be another 48 around, but with the second color now, my white. I'm just going to put in a stitch now so I can deal with my pink yarn for a moment without this completely falling off. So since we're done with the first color, I'm going to cut that. You can, if you'd like, while we're here, you can knot it with the tail of the white yarn that you just put in. Just make sure it's tight, but yeah, that you're not like pulling it too tight that it messes up the stitch. But I'll double knot that just to keep them both secure. And now we can move on with our row 14, which is just 48 around. I'm going to use my stitch marker just out of habit, but you should be able to see when you come up on this row, finishing this row 14, because you know your first white stitch is the beginning of the row, but still, it doesn't hurt to have your stitch marker. And then you'll just do 1 single crochet in every stitch on this row. And after this row, we'll start decreasing. But for this row, it's just 1 stitch in each, 1 single crochet in each stitch from the row before. And I will meet you back at the end of this row. I'm on my last few stitches of row 14. And we'll continue on with the white for row 15, actually for the rest of the shark. This is how it looks so far. And we'll start doing our decrease rows to make the bottom of the shark on row 15. What we're going to do on row 15 is we're going to do 4 single crochet and then a decrease. So let's do the 4 single crochet together. 2. Get my stitch marker in that first one. And 2 more. So 4 single crochet and then a decrease, and we'll do this all around. So a decrease is basically you're trying to make the row smaller, so you're going to take 2 stitches and make it into 1 stitch. So usually we put 1 stitch, if we're increasing, but 1 stitch in each one stitch in each stitch from the row before, but here we're taking 2 of the stitches from the row previous row, and we're turning it into 1 stitch. So I'd like to do what's called an invisible decrease, which is when you insert your hook in the front loop of the next 2 stitches. So I'm in the front loop of 1 stitch, and then I go back. I keep that on my hook, and I go back and get into the front loop of the next stitch, and then I just treat that as my stitch. I yarn over, pull back through both those loops. So now I have 2 loops on my hook. I yarn over and pull through both loops as if we were doing a single crochet. So now we've done 1 single crochet on the 2 stitches. And then you continue on with your stitches. We'll do 4 more before we do another decrease. Just be mindful, it's easy to see with this yarn, but sometimes with other yarn, blanket yarn or just other fuzzy yarn, it's hard to see your very next V. Sometimes you think you might want to go back into this stitch, but you can see this loop is really part of the decrease. You don't want to go in there. So let's keep doing this around the row. 4 single crochet and then a decrease. 2, 3, 4, and let's go over the decrease again. Front loop of the next stitch, front loop of the stitch next to that one, yarn over, pull through both those loops. You have 2 loops on your hook, then you yarn over and pull through just like you would on a single crochet. And let's keep doing that all around. I'll do 1 more with you. 1, 2, 3, 1 more single crochet. Now let's do a decrease. Front loop, front loop, yarn over, pull through both those loops, have 2 on your hook, yarn over, and pull through. So we're going to repeat that. I can't remember how many we did already. Did we do 3? So we should have 5 more. I think it's 8 total on this row. And we'll just keep doing that till we get to the end of the row. Our last stitch should be a decrease, and I will meet you over there. At the end of row 15 now, I just did my last decrease. And for row 16, we're going to continue to decrease, but we're going to decrease after 2 single crochets. So 2 single crochets, then a decrease, 2 single crochets, then a decrease, and we're going to do that all around. We'll do that 10 times. So I'll start it off with you. 1, 2, then we'll do a decrease. Same thing that we did the row before for our decrease. 1, 2, decrease, 1, 2, decrease. I'll do 1 more after this, and then we'll meet the end of the row. 1, 2, and a decrease. And we'll just keep doing that pattern till we get to the end of the row, and I will meet you back there. I am at my last 2 single crochet and decrease in the row. That was 2 single crochet and a decrease, and that is the end of row 16. We'll keep decreasing. This is what it should look like now, and you should have 30 stitches. We will keep going that way. So row 17 is another decrease row. We're going to do 3 single crochet and a decrease all around. So 1, and it starts to get just like when we were growing, making these rows wider. It was a little fiddly at the bottom there, and as we kind of get tighter into this fewer stitches area, then it'll be harder to work through your stitches. You just have to move your hook around a little and get into where you need to go. 1, 2, 3, and then a decrease. Do a couple more. 1, 2, 3, then a decrease. And after this decrease, I will meet you at the end of the row. And we'll go from there. We are at the end of row 17, and you should have 24 stitches. We just have a couple rows left. But right now, after this row, I want to go ahead and put in our safety eyes. If you've seen my bee tutorial, I didn't use safety eyes in that one. I embroidered eyes in that one, or sewed eyes. And if you have one of my kits, then you have the yarn if you want to sew in your eyes to do that. But for this one, I just wanted to show you how to do safety eyes. And where we're going to put them is in the row. I like the eyes to be in the row just above the color change. So either right in this row or the row above. And so here it would be either in this last pink row or the row above that. And it's totally up to you where you want it. I believe the front, if you've been going like this, I believe the front, like the snout of the shark, is right at the beginning of your row where we started making those increases, but it doesn't matter that much. Just whichever side you don't put the eyes on, you'll be putting in the fin, the tail fin, after. So as far as where the eyes go, they go about 10 stitches apart on the row above the color change, like we talked about. These are the safety eyes. They come in 2 parts. I don't really know why they're called safety eyes. I guess because they have this backing thing, but they're not actually safe for young children, like kids under 3. They're not safe for that because they can come out, or they can be pulled out with some strong teeth or something. And that's just, it's a choking hazard. So if you have small kids in your house, you may not want to use safety eyes. But for this little shark, just to show you how I'll do it. So what I like to do is kind of find the middle just by squishing it a little bit. And that's about the middle. And then I'll count 5 stitches each direction, and that gets me about 10 stitches apart. So let's say I start right around here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll try to stick it in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're just doing the front for now. Once we get them in a position that we like, we'll put the backs on so they stay in place. That's 1. Then I'll recount from the snout, or just from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about there. And again, this is totally up to you. If you want your eyes further apart, closer together, you can move them around and decide where you like them. Well, these aren't even. One is a row above. So first thing I'm going to do is move this guy down. And those holes will close up a little bit. You can just move the yarn around and it'll close up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Same spot, just a row below. Right at that color change is where I like it. All right. So once I stick that in, and it's hard to tell without stuffing too. If you want to, you can put a little of your stuffing in. At this point, I like to kind of take it apart, loosen it up. I normally don't do this, but it's no problem if you want to. If you want to just kind of shape your shark a little bit while you're figuring out where the eyes go. And then you can look at it from Then you can look at it from different angles, like does it look centered? Do you like the way it looks from the side? Would you rather it further apart or closer together? I think these look pretty good. You can always count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's about right. So this is where I'm going to put them. I'll take a little of this stuffing out just so I can show you how to do the other side of the safety eyes. So you'll take the other piece of the safety eyes that has like a narrow part that sticks up and then a wider part on the bottom. You take the narrow part and you put it onto, move that away, put it onto the back of the eye, and then you have to push it all the way in. I've seen a tool they have now that you can whoosh, it squishes the eyes right together, and then once you get it all the way as far as it can go, you'll see it sticks on there pretty good. So they do stick pretty well, but again, it is a choking hazard for small children. Now we'll do the second eye. So take your other backing, put it over the eye, and then while you're holding the eye from one side and holding the backing from the other, you just squish the backing up against the eye as much as you can. And then make sure it's tight, and then let's take a look again. Maybe not perfectly even, but you can also kind of even it out once you get the stuffing in. For this row, row 18, we're going to do 1 single crochet and then a decrease all around. So we'll start at our first stitch. We'll do a couple together. 1 single crochet and then a decrease. And as I may have mentioned before, that was our decrease. So now let me get my stitch marker in. Anyway, as I've mentioned before, as you reduce the number of stitches in the row, it gets a little harder to go into just your front loops of the stitches, especially once you have stuffing in there too. Just do the best you can. So that was 1. And then a decrease. I'm going to keep going this same way all around the rest of the row. When we're done, we should have 16 stitches, and I will meet you at the end of the row. I'm on my last single crochet and decrease of row 18, and at the end of this row you should have 16 stitches. And then we can stuff a little bit more. Here's my last decrease. We'll stuff some more, and then we'll get to our last row. And the stuffing is up to you somewhat. With this yarn, if you stuff it too much and really expand the stitches, then you can see through the stitches to the stuffing. So I prefer to stuff this a little less than I might stuff like this type of shark, where you can't really see the inside. But the stuffing is up to you. If you want it firmer, just keep going with stuffing. If you want it less firm, that's fine too. I need a little bit, excuse me, more on the back end, and then we'll get to our next row. All right, I may fill a little bit more after our last row, and then I'll just have to shove it in with my hook. So let's get going on our last row, which will be a little difficult, and I usually end up trying to hold the working yarn a little bit tighter when it comes to the last row, because when you're trying to fiddle around to all these front loops, the loop on your hook tends to stretch out a bit, and I like to try to keep it tighter. So I hold on to the yarn around my finger a little more than I normally would, so it doesn't free flow quite as much. So we're going to go into the front loop of the next 2 stitches. We're going to do front loop only decreases throughout the whole row. That's 1, and there should be 8 of these, and you'll end up with 8 stitches at the end of row 19. It's a little harder to get in. 2, let's do one more together. Okay, I will meet you back around at the end. You should have 8 stitches left, and then we can close off and work on the fins and the tail. I am at the end of row 19, and I have 8 stitches, and this is your last opportunity. If you feel like your shark needs a little more stuffing, you can shape it once it's closed up, but if you feel you want a little more stuffing in there, this is your last opportunity to stick it in. And if you can't put it in that hole just with your fingers, you can use the back of your crochet hook, and you can use any kind of crochet hook. You can use the back of this crochet hook to just put it in there, and then once we close this up, we can shape it however you want. So what we do now is we cut the yarn, leave a tail for sewing of, between 5 and 10 inches. Doesn't have to be super long. You can take out your stitch marker at this point, and I pull out the end through my last stitch. So we're going to weave in all these stitches next. So you'll want to take your needle, and what we're going to do is go into the front loops of each of these stitches and sew this closed. So this was your last stitch. You're just going to go into the front loop of each stitch. So from the outside of the stitch to the inside of the stitch, or the inside of the row, and pull through. You don't have to pull super tight because yet we're going to go all through 8 stitches. Do that again through the center of the stitch. Oh, not across, just each stitch. You might get some fuzzies from the filling in your way. Just get it out of the way, and once we close up, we can get rid of those. So do that, you'll do that 8 times till you get around all the stitches. And when you get around to all the stitches, you'll pull it closed. There you go. That's closed. If you want to weave in your end a little bit, I put the needle through a couple of stitches and pull it tighter, and then you can go back in the other direction, not on the same stitches that you just went through, or you'll just take it out. The other, what you weaved will come out, but in other stitches, just weave that back in, and then take your needle wherever you just came out of, whatever hole you came out of, go back in with your needle and come out somewhere else, and then we'll cut this tail off. Don't cut your shark, and then the end of that yarn should be somewhere inside your shark. Your shark just needs some fins and tail fins like here, and then the shark will be done. To make the side fins, we're going to be working a little differently than we were throughout the shark. We were going in the round and going into the V of each stitch around. We're going to now work into the actual stitch. We'll get around the stitch like that and pull the stitch itself on our hook, and that's what we'll be working into. So I'm going to use my first color yarn and work right above where the color change is, which is what I did here. And we want our side fins to be lined up sort of to the center of the fin. Then we just kind of look down, and we're going to go into one stitch, and then we're going to end up in the stitch behind it. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but you can always try to match up your fins when you're working on the other side, because we're doing two fins, two side fins, one on each side. So I'm going to put my hook into this stitch. I'm going to pull up a loop into this stitch. So I'm going to hold my yarn around my hook and pull it through the stitch. But I'm not going to pull it all the way through. I just have a loop here, and I'm going to secure it by doing a chain. A chain is just, you have a loop on your hook, you yarn over, and you pull through that loop. And there you have a chain. So that's how my yarn is secure. We'll deal with that end later. Now we're going to chain 4. So this was just to secure your hook. You're going to chain 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you have 4 chains. This first chain is the one that's attached to your hook. We're not doing anything with that one. But the second chain, we're going to slip stitch into that. So slip stitch, if you haven't watched the tutorial, is yarn over, or well, insert your hook into the chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, and instead of yarning over again, you're just going to pull the hoop into the loop, through the loop that's on your hook, like that. And that gives you a little sort of point to your fin. In the the third chain on your hook, you're going to put a half double crochet, which we haven't done on this shark yet, but you can also watch the tutorial on that if you need to, but I'll do it slowly. You yarn over before you insert your hook, then you insert your hook into the chain, then you yarn over again, pull your hook through the chain. I think I missed the chain there. There we go. So yarn over, make sure you get it into the hole in between the V, and you don't split the yarn. Yarn over, pull up. Now you have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all these 3 loops. And that's a half double crochet. And then into the next chain, we're going to do a double crochet, which starts in a similar way. You yarn over, you insert your hook, yarn over again, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through just 2 loops on your hook. And now you still have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over again, and pull through both loops. And this guy is getting a little loose, you just have to pull that tighter. So now what we're going to do is we're going to insert our hook into the stitch next to this stitch, wherever you can, and we're going to secure the other part of the fin, or this top part right there. So I'm in this stitch. I'm going to try to get in the very next stitch. May take a couple tries. I'm going to pull up a loop and do a slip stitch in here. So I pulled up a loop, and now instead of yarning over and pulling through like a single crochet, I'm just going to take this loop and pull it through the loop on my hook. And now I've secured one fin. So let's cut the yarn. So I've cut the yarn, and I'm going to take the loop from the cut end and stick it through the chain, or stick it through the loop that was on my hook, and pull it tightly, just to secure that. Then, now that we have both these ends, I'm going to tie them into a double knot, just to secure that other end too. And then we're going to weave in, take both of the ends. They're kind of uneven, so it may be difficult for me to thread my needle. If you can thread both ends into your needle at once, that's great. If you can't, that's also fine. You can do one at a time. But I'm going to take those two ends and I'm going to insert my hook kind of near where that knot is, and then take it out or pull out the yarn somewhere else. Just to weave those ends in, and I'm going to cut this end. Don't cut your shark, but cut the end. And if you move your shark around, you should get rid of that piece that was showing, and now it's secure inside your shark. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. For our second fin, we'll want to put it somewhere along the same line as where the first fin is, so they match up. But again, it's hard to get these things perfect, and they don't have to be perfect. That's how they're unique. Insert your hook in a stitch like we did before. Lost the end of my yarn. There we go. And then remember, we'll make a loop, loop it onto the hook, and pull that yarn through the stitch. And once it's through, we'll take the working end of the yarn, and we'll move some of this stuffing. We'll get rid of some of this stuffing after we finish. You're going to yarn over and make a chain just to secure that piece of yarn. Now we'll do 4 chains again. 1, 2, 3, 4. And remember, in this second chain, not the first one that's on your hook, but in the second one, we'll slip stitch. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, and then pull one loop through the other. Then we'll half double crochet, so yarn over into the next, and insert into the next chain, yarn over again, pull through. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through all 3, and then we'll do a double crochet. Yarn over, insert into that 4th chain, yarn over, pull through a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So now we'll go into the next stitch. We'll take this end, put it into the next stitch, to the one we first inserted, and do a slip stitch into that stitch. So insert, yarn over, pull through a loop, and then pull that loop through the loop on your hook. And there's your second fin, and we can tie it off. So cut your yarn, run your end through the loop that you just took your hook out of and pull it tight. Then you can knot your 2 ends. As you get more comfortable with this process and make more animals like this, then you will get comfortable not necessarily making your knot right here, but you can weave in the ends and then make a knot, and then also hide the knot inside your piece. So if you can thread both ends in your needle, great. If not, just do them separately and go into right where you made your knot, and then pull out, stuck, pull out your needle somewhere else, then cut your yarn, and there you go. Now you got two fins, and all we have left is the tail. For our last step in this video, we will put in our tail fins, and it's a similar process to putting in these side fins, but a few different stitches. So what we're going to do first is, I'm not going to go into this first row right before the color change. I'm going to go one row up. So it's the second to last row of your first color, and I'm going to insert my hook kind of close, as close as I can to the back. So around there. I'm going to insert my hook into a stitch like we did with the side fins, and I'm going to use my first color again for my tail fins. First thing I'm going to do is attach the yarn just like we did with the side fins. I have a loop that I pull through, and then I'm going to secure it with a chain. Pull that tight. You can always tighten up the other side. So now I have the secured yarn on my hook. I'm going to chain 4, 2, 3, 4. Then this in the third chain for my hook. So this is the chain that's on my hook, or that with the loop that's on my hook. That's the first chain. The second chain, I'm going to skip these 2, and into the third chain, I'm going to put in 2 double crochets. So yarn over, insert your hook into the chain, yarn over again, pull up a loop, yarn over again, pull through 2, yarn over again, pull through 2. Okay, that's 1 double crochet. I'm going to put in another double crochet in that same stitch. Just do the same thing we just did. So now you have 2 double crochets in that third chain. And we're going to do that again. We're going to put 2 double crochets into the fourth chain. Insert, pull through 2, and pull through 2, and 1 more. Yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Now that we've done our 4 double crochets, 2 in each of the chains, we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to slip stitch into the same stitch we started in. So take your yarn, or take your hook, and insert it right back to where we were. There we go. We'll do a slip stitch. So yarn over, pull that loop through, and then pull that yarn through. Oops. Don't lose your loop there. Then pull the yarn through the loop on your hook, and then you can kind of pull that a little tighter. And now we're going to slip stitch into the chain below the stitch you started in. So it'll be the stitch in the last row of your first color, and we're going to slip stitch into there. There we go. Now we're going to start our second fin. We're going to do the same thing that we just did. We're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and in the third stitch, the third chain, we're going to put 2 double crochet. Remember, yarn over, insert into the chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, and pull through 2 loops. So that's 2. And then in the 4th chain, we're going to do the same thing. Yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and last double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over and pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. So now you have your 2 or your 4 double crochets. So chain 2 again. We're going to slip stitch into the stitch we just came out of. Yarn over, pull up a loop, and then instead of yarning over, just pull through, or pull one loop through the other. And it may take a couple tries. Then pull that tight, and now you have your 2 fins. We're just going to finish it off. So cut your yarn, and again, leave a bit of a tail so we can sew it together with the other one. Again, I like to run at the end through the loop that was on my hook, just to secure it a little better. Now this first end, where we first inserted, doesn't really match up in the exact spot as your second end. So the first thing I'm going to do is thread the first end that we started with into my needle and bring it over right where that other end is. And now I can tie these 2 together and run them both through the shark and then cut it off, and then it'll disappear into the shark. And there's your shark. Great job. You can also sew in some details. You can sew these gills with black yarn. You can sew these teeth, which somehow look like a mustache to me. Or you can sew on a mouth. And I can show you how to do the gills. To do the gills, you'll just find a spot between the eyes and the fins, the side fins, and you'll sew in a couple of rounds for the gills. So you take your black yarn and you insert your hook somewhere, anywhere you want, and bring it towards where you want to have the gills. I make mine about 2 rows below the color change and 2 rows above the color change. So you can insert your hook, insert your needle about 2 rows above the color change and pull through a big part of your yarn, and then I'll go down and insert my my needle. You're basically just sewing these in. Insert my needle about 3 or 4 rows below that, and then pull it through right next to the first one I did, and pull that through. Make sure you like the positioning of it, seems fine, and then I'll do it again. I'll go into the stitch next to the one I just did, and then I'll pull the needle back, or put the needle back through to where I originally started. So now I have these 2 gills on one side. I would repeat that on the other side, but let's finish this yarn. Let me show you how to finish this yarn. I'll cut your yarn, and I like to cut these evenly at this point, just so I can thread them both. And you'll double knot your yarn. 1, 2, and then thread both pieces if you can onto your needle. If not, you can do it separately. But what you're going to do is go right back into the same hole that you started in, and you're going to pull this knot through somewhere else, and we'll hide the tails in the body. So you're going to go into that same stitch, and then wherever you can, bring your needle through. It's stuffed, so it's not that easy. Okay, bring your needle through and pull it so the knot also goes on the inside. There you go. And so your knot is securing the yarn inside. And then you take your scissors, don't cut your shark, but cut that off. And now you have your gills, and you'll just repeat the same thing on the other side if that's what you want to do. Okay, I finished up the gills on both sides of my little shark, and I've kind of shaped them how I like them. And now the shark is complete. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please tag me on Instagram or leave me a comment below if you like the tutorial, and send me the photos of the sharks that you make. Thanks so much for watching.